Picture France in 1939, new factories humming, uniforms being measured, and a group of engineers in Poissy staring at a cab-over truck thinking, oui, it will work. That truck was the Matford F917WS, the French answer to a very practical question. How do you move 5 tons of stuff without frightening the horses and while annoying as few mechanics as possible? Built by Matford, the French joint venture between Mathis and Ford, it arrived just in time to be thrown into the most chaotic logistics exam in modern history. And somehow, with a brave little V8 and a face like a Parisian building lift, it passed. The idea was simple. Take a robust Ford pattern ladder chassis, push the cab forward for better cargo length, and power it with a flathead V8. Under that short nose sat a petrol engine of 621 cubic centimeters, approximately 221 cubic inches, rated at about 72 horsepower at 750 revolutions per minute. Torque mattered more than bragging rights, and by the math, it delivered roughly 186 newton meters, approximately 137 pound-feet, enough to haul a small town's worth of baguettes, or, more realistically, army gear through spring mud. A 4-speed manual gearbox did the shifting, and drivers reported that it did not so much change gears as politely negotiate them, like asking a maitre for a better table during rush hour. On paper, the F917WS was a 4-kind 2, not an off-road monster, but it was built to carry. The rated payload hovered around 4,500 kilograms, approximately 9,921 pounds. Top speed was about 72 kilometers per hour, approximately 45 miles per hour, on good roads with a forgiving wind, which for a 5-ton truck with a cab over the engine feels surprisingly lively. The wheelbase measured about 3.98 meters, approximately 13.1 feet, a useful middle ground between stability under load and the ability to thread narrow village corners without reshaping the bakery. The cab-over layout gave it a distinctive profile. Tall windscreen, short bonnet, and a driver sitting so far forward that the front bumper felt like a roomer. Visibility was excellent. Crash protection, let's say, optimistic. But that forward cab freed up more bed space, which the Army loved. You could load crates, tarps, spare wheels, tool chests, and still have room for the corporal who insisted all ropes be coiled clockwise for operational efficiency. The suspension used semi-elliptic leaf springs all around, stout and simple, because if there is anything soldiers respect more than courage, it is a spring you can fix with a hammer. France ordered the F97WS as part of a rapid pre-war mobilization. Production moved to the Poissy plant, further from the frontier, and trucks began rolling out in early 1940. Depending on which ledger you trust, around 1,000 to 1,200 examples were completed before the factory had to be evacuated. Many went straight to supply units and engineering columns. Fuel, ammunition, bridging gear, field kitchens, the rolling definition of everything else. In service, the F97WS earned a reputation for being willing, honest, and occasionally temperamental. French crews appreciated its straightforward layout and the way the V8 pulled cleanly at low revs. The gearbox, once you learned its rhythm, would do what you asked. The brakes, once properly adjusted, would do what you begged. And when rain turned routes into rivers, the truck's relatively short wheelbase and forward weight bias helped the front axle bite, dragging the rear along like a stubborn cousin at a family wedding. Then came the fall of France. Many F917WS trucks were captured and pressed into Wehrmacht service, repainted, renumbered, and set to work. German depot notes were not always kind, but the trucks were used extensively because that is what armies do with captured equipment. They use it until it breaks, then complain in 2 languages. Some F917WS chassis were built as tankers of around 5,000 liters, approximately 1,321 gallons, others as general service lorries. A few period photos show the same cab-over silhouette in long convoys where every truck looked equally muddy and important. Under the cab, the little flathead earned respect. A 3.6-liter V8, approximately 221 cubic inches, does not sound dramatic next to the heavy brutes of later years. But its torque curve was friendly, and its manners civilized. With sensible gearing and a driver who knew how to roll into the throttle, the F9117WS could start heavy and keep moving without roasting the clutch. Daily checks were simple: oil, coolant, plugs, points, and prayer. Field mechanics liked that most service points were reachable without removing half the cab, which in a driving rain is the difference between fixed and tomorrow. What about numbers that matter on the road? Payload of 500 kilograms, approximately 9,921 pounds, meant real utility. A convoy of 20 trucks like that could shift 90 tons in a single lift, which, if you're feeding a brigade, is the difference between morale and mutiny. Speed at 72 kilometers per hour, approximately 45 miles per hour, kept up with traffic where roads allowed. Fuel consumption was not dainty. The flathead V8 was many things, but shy at the pump it was not. On the other hand, parts commonality with Ford designs made the supply chain less painful, and for an army in a hurry, that counts as strategy. Design details reveal the priorities. The cab-over architecture improved approach sightlines in tight urban work. The modest ground clearance was acceptable on metalled roads and firm tracks. Steel wheels with robust bolt patterns and straightforward drums kept maintenance sane. The frame was a conventional ladder type, with crossmembers deep enough to shrug off the abuse of hurried loading, hard braking, and the occasional lieutenant who thought curbstones were optional. Nothing exotic, nothing to scare a village blacksmith. Exactly what a 1939 Army needed when the map kept changing. Historically, the F917WS sits at a crossroads. The last pre-war French push to standardize modern trucks, and the beginning of a long post-war lineage. After liberation, the concept evolved under Ford SAF, then Simca, and even Unic, morphing into the cargo line that kept the cab-over spirit alive well into the 1950s. In a sense, the F97WS is the grandparent who still turns up at reunions in a clean jacket, grumbling about youngsters, but secretly proud they all came from the same sturdy bones. It was not perfect. Ask any wartime driver and they will tell you that perfection is a myth sold by brochure writers. But was it important? Absolutely. It moved fuel and shells when those mattered most. It carried sappers in their folding boats. It brought bread where bread kept order. That is the quiet heroism of logistics. No anthems, no medals, just engines that start and loads that arrive. Stand next to a restored F977WS today, and you feel the proportions make sense. The cab is close, the bed is long, and the stance says, work first. Turn the key and the flathead thumps awake with that soft 8-beat burble. Ease it into first, and it rolls away like a promise. Not fast, not glamorous, but sure. In a world obsessed with speed, there is something deeply satisfying about a machine designed to win the slow race, the race that keeps whole armies moving. If you enjoyed this ride through a very French chapter of truck history, hit subscribe. There are plenty more unsung workhorses waiting, some elegant, some awkward, all of them interesting. And next time, we might even find one that does not argue with second gear.